Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Well, we begin tonight in Nunavut, where there's a battle with COVID-19 continuing. They've got 70 active cases, all of which are located in Iqaluit, the territory's capital. The Nunavut government took questions from reporters today and said that over the weekend, Nunavut's elders' home was evacuated after a staff member there tested positive for COVID. All residents are now in other elder facilities in Ottawa and elsewhere throughout Nunavut. Nunavut's Chief Public Health Officer explains why.
The reports that we received is that because of the number of staff in isolation, there weren't enough staff left to provide safe and appropriate care for the next 2 weeks.
As we told you on Friday, Manitoba imposed new lockdown measures and over the weekend announced that schools will be closed going remote this week as the province hit the third worst COVID hotspot in North America per capita. But it's a whole different story in Saskatchewan, which hit a big milestone yesterday. 71% of adults over age 40 now have received their first shot of a COVID-19 vaccine, and the province has set a target to start reopening.
We are able to move forward with step one of the reopening roadmap because so many Saskatchewan people are doing their part and they are getting vaccinated. And because we all are following the public health orders and the guidelines to reduce the spread of COVID-19.
Step one of the reopening will begin May 30th. It includes bars and restaurants allowing up to 6 people at a table, the resumption of group fitness classes, private gatherings of up to 10 people, and public indoor gatherings of up to 30 people. That's, of course, in Saskatchewan. Well, it's graduation season, of course, and while the pandemic has canceled the University of Manitoba's traditional graduation powwow for the second year in a row, a record number of Indigenous students still celebrated during a virtual event. This year, there are 510 Indigenous students expected to graduate. That's believed to be the largest number in the history of the university. This past weekend's virtual celebration included performances and speeches from local Indigenous leaders and recognition, of course, of the graduates. One of those was Stuart Hill, who earned his PhD in Natural Resources and Environmental Management. He's from God's Lake First Nation in northern Manitoba and the first in his community to earn a PhD.
One of the things that I've realized looking back on my education journey is that once you achieve that degree, once you have that degree, it's yours. It's yours for life. No one can take it away from you. It'll benefit not only you, it'll benefit your children. It'll benefit your family. And that's one of the things that is so great about achieving an education and degree.
If you have somebody that you're very proud of graduating this year, you can let us know about it. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us, of course, on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, YouTube and TikTok. Follow APTN News and join the conversation and see all of our latest stories. While many parts of the country are grappling with unusually dry conditions, it's spring breakup season in the south part of the Northwest Territories, and this year high water levels have put several communities in a state of emergency. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs tells us more.
This siren signals water levels along the Decho, Mackenzie River, have reached 15 meters high. This weekend, officials in Fort Simpson, Northwest Territories, ordered an evacuation for residents living on the island, more than half of the 1,200-person community.
We're canoeing down the main street. It's pretty wild. I've never thought I'd have to canoe to get to the pump house. We're going to do a level check here at the pump house to see where we are officially at with our water levels.
Of the roughly 700 people displaced, some have been flown to Fort Smith, while others are camping on higher ground or staying with relatives.
Like friends and family in town they have to leave the town. So they're either in Fort Smith or they're staying at relatives at Wild Rose. 4 Mile is still high.
The whole Papal site is pretty much underwater.
Jonathan Antoine, a local filmmaker from Lillikwe First Nation in Fort Simpson, has been documenting the flood.
The hope is like the water goes down like right away. I don't want it to go any higher. The causeway, I want it to hold up because that's the only transportation that you could go into the community. And my hope is everybody comes together and helps rebuild.
Fort Simpson isn't the only community affected.
The water came up really fast.
Iqaluit First Nation and Hay River are on evacuation alert with rising water levels.
Oh my gosh!
Meanwhile, in Jean Marie River, almost every house has been damaged by water and contaminated with fuel this weekend. The community of less than 100 was evacuated over the weekend. APTN will be following up on evacuation stories this week. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
We need to take a break, but when we come back, a new tip line for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
We also find a lot of the times when someone goes missing in Montreal that it is the Indigenous community who knows where these people are.
Welcome back. Not long after BC announced cell service would be coming to the Highway of Tears, Indigenous advocates in Montreal announced that they'll also be relying on phones, a hotline to get tips on women who have gone missing. Lindsay Richardson explains how this is going to work.
Dial 1-855-547-5938.
Hello and welcome to the Ishkwe Confidential Tip Line.
And you'll reach this toll-free MMIWG info line.
If you have information about an Indigenous woman that is either missing or has been murdered, please leave a message.
It's confidential, open to callers 24/7. And as of this week,
you will see this on buses, on street columns, in metros, and on billboards on highways.
The number was unveiled on Monday, a joint creation of the Native Women's Shelter and its Ishkwe project. They say distrust of the police is still an issue here, so they're offering an anonymous alternative to community members if and when their loved one disappears.
We also find a lot of the times when someone goes missing in Montreal that it is the Indigenous community who knows where these people are.
Within the last 3 years, 47 women have gone missing in the Montreal area alone. Ishkwe managed to locate 46. Only one case remains cold.
I think a lot of it is also for Donna Perret, I'm going to keep going back to her. She's been missing since 2018. She's a 32-year-old Inuk woman. Someone knows something out there.
Keanu believes the lack of follow-through on the MMIWG Commission's Quebec-specific findings continues to put these women at risk.
This is an example of how community has the solutions. We aren't waiting for the police or government to take action in order to find Indigenous women, trans and two-spirit people. This is really a huge human rights issue, and there's absolutely no reason why this should continue.
But someone has to monitor the line and pick up the messages. The task goes to Ishkwe's research coordinator, who says the toll-free line could provide more than just hard leads on open cases.
We hope to go to the government and show the actual numbers. And I think the majority of the population in Quebec, they actually don't know how big this problem is, even in the province of Quebec, actually.
The 1-855 number goes live as of today and will be open to the public for at least the next 6 weeks, thanks to funding from the City of Montreal. Meanwhile, the Native Women's Shelter and the Ishkwe Project are both hoping to extend it a little bit longer, insisting that this could be a necessary lifeline for the families of missing women in the city. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
We want to know what you think of the new tip line for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Montreal. You can let us know. Of course, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Okay, so going now to a group of homeless Montrealers, many of whom are Indigenous. They've come to become the subject of dueling petitions, one that wants them to move along from a regular hangout spot and another that wanted to create solidarity. Tom Fenario reads this story by Shushan Bacon.
The Mont Royal Metro Station is among the busiest in Montreal. It's the gateway to the popular Plateau Montréal neighborhood. Normally known for its stores and restaurants, lately it's been in the news for something else. Specifically, a group of homeless individuals who've become the subject of this petition, asking the borough to find a solution for the homeless, many of whom are Indigenous, rather than tolerating their continued occupation of a nearby parking lot that served as a warm-up area during the winter. There is screaming, excessive drinking, fights, broken beer bottles, and people going to the bathroom in front of us and our children, reads the petition, the creator of which did not respond to our request for an interview. But not everyone is bothered by the homeless in the area. A citizen group has decided to show their solidarity by starting their own petition that instead asks for services that were there in the winter to be reinstated.
On veut que les gens restent, on veut que les gens reçoivent les services dont ils ont besoin, mais définis de leur propre façon. Ils sont les experts sur leur propre vécu.
Rutland adds that complaining about noise in an area known for its nightlife shows a lack of awareness about one's surroundings.
Si on a fait le choix de vivre ici, on doit être capable d'engager avec les autres résidents du quartier. Et que ce soit un bar qui est très bruyant ou que ce soit des gens qui utilisent un espace public.
A city councillor for the Plateau Montréal borough says they're listening to all of their residents and want to foster a harmonious cohabitation.
Il faut travailler avec les organismes communautaires et les différents partenaires institutionnels parce que on peut pas se cacher qu'avant tout sont des responsabilités qui relèvent du provincial, la santé SUS.
The borough plans on holding a city hall meeting with residents to look for solutions. Meanwhile, the petition in support of more services for the homeless has 10 times more signatures than the one calling for their removal. A story by Shushan Bacon, APTN National News, Montreal.
Are there cutting-edge ways to help the homeless in your community? Share that with us. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and to see our latest stories. Well, there is a new shopping center in the works on the Tsuut'ina Nation near Calgary. The nation opened a Costco back in 2020 and now have plans for a strip mall nearby. Local and national businesses like Dollarama, Tim Hortons, and the Bank of Montreal will be opening in the community next year. Bryce Starlight with the Teza Corporation behind the development says, like Costco, the strip mall is expected to bring more opportunities to nation members.
We've been fortunate enough to have had quite a few nation members employed by Costco, and really they've helped to create a sense of confidence in the developments that we've built, and also in investing in the nation itself.
Last week we told you about a Mi'kmaq educational group that was recognized with the Governor General's Award for Innovation, but there was also another organization honored called Arctic Corridors and Northern Voices. It combines science and Inuit knowledge to map the shipping routes in the Arctic. Climate change has led to melting ice and an increase in shipping in the north. 14 Inuit communities were consulted on the project to protect marine mammals and the Inuit way of life. Shirley Tagalak is from Arviat, Nunavut. She was a consultant on the project to make Arctic waters safer for everyone.
We generated a series of maps that described in detail all of those activities seasonally, looking at different wildlife uses, looking at harvester uses, and also changes, changes to the coastal area. So even areas that are slumping because of, eroding or slumping because of permafrost degradation. We're able to capture all of that information.
After having partnered to build a 2-megawatt solar farm in their community, the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation has begun construction on 3 solar farms south of Calgary. The $140 million investment will have an output of 67 megawatts with enough energy to power 22,000 homes. Farms are expected to go online within 12 to 14 months.
I think it is the right move to do, not only for green energy, but to promote ACFN and go down that path, because it's a source of revenue that will always be there for future generations. We're cutting away from the oil and gas sector. If anything was to ever happen to the oil and gas sector, at least we'll have another flow of resources coming in.
Time for another break, but when we come back, I'm going to tell you all about a new study that shows cultural activities reduce stress and heart disease. We'll tell you all about it. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Our viewer captured this photo of downtown Toronto along the shoreline on a nighttime walk. Thanks so much for this, Carol McIver. If you've got a great photo, send it to us at share@aptn.ca, and you could be our next photo of the day. Let's take a look now at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting off on the east coast, we've got rain and 14 degrees for Fredericton, 11 and cloud for St. John's. The Grand River, sunshine and 11 degrees expected, 2 in Nain with a chance of flurries. Chibougamau, sunshine and 12 degrees, Gaspé, 11 and sunny. North Bay, 9 degrees with a chance of flurries actually in North Bay. Same with Sault Ste. Marie, but only 7 degrees there. Sunshine for Sioux Lookout, 14 degrees, 15s for Big Trout Lake and Thunder Bay. Sunny in northern Manitoba, Puckatawagan, expected to be 14 degrees, 16 for God's Lake. 18 and sunshine for Brandon and Winnipeg, 19 in Dauphin. Sunshine and sunny for Yorkton, Regina, Estevan, Saskatoon, all 19 degrees. Buffalo Narrows, some showers expected, 16 degrees. Showers up for Stony Rapids and Uranium City, 2 6s there. Showers expected for Fort Chip and 10 degrees there. Sunshine in Grand Prairie and 17 expected. 16 in rain for Edmonton, 18 and a chance of showers in Medicine Hat. Sunshine and 23 for Kamloops, it's the hot spot down there, 18 and cloud for Bella Coola. Smithers, sunshine and 16, cloud up in Fort Nelson and 17 degrees expected there. Whitehorse, 11, Beaver Creek, 12, Rock River, the only place with some sunshine, 5 degrees. 15 for Norman Wells, sunny skies, Watee, 7 and sunshine. Colville Lake, 5 with sun expected, -7 and sunny in Sax Harbor. New Yacht, 0 and a chance of flurries. Whale Cove, 1 and RV at 1, flurries there too. Iqaluit, -3 with flurries expected there. Arctic Bay, -7. Kenite, flurries, -1. According to a recent study by the University of Missouri School of Medicine, there's a direct link that can be made with Indigenous cultural activities reducing stress and heart disease. The study's principal investigator and member of the Cherokee Nation, Dr. Melissa Lewis, told Dennis Ward all about the findings.
Dr. Lewis, thanks so much for being with us. Can you tell us a little bit about the study you conducted and what led you to it?
Sure. So this study is about cardiometabolic disease in Indigenous communities. This is a literature review based on many years of data looking at the relationship between stress and trauma and things like heart disease, diabetes, and hypertension. And what we sort of found and what we sort of already knew in some ways was that, you know, there is a relationship between stress and trauma and heart disease diagnosis for Indigenous people, and that simply telling Native folks that they need to change their diet or exercise more, it doesn't really capture the high rates of heart disease in Indigenous communities, and it also doesn't really respect the process in which Native people experience heart disease.
According to your findings, can you speak a bit about the causes for Indigenous people being at higher risk of cardiometabolic disease? There are historical implications here.
Yeah, that's right. We took an intergenerational and kind of a lifespan development perspective. there isn't a lot of data out there yet about this. So what we found were relationships. So for instance, people who have higher rates of historical trauma measured through the historical loss scale are more likely to be at risk for heart disease through pathways like increased physiological dysfunction, increased mental health distress. And then kind of moving forward, we looked at early childhood stress as a second category of this kind of like Indigenous specific stress. And so with the data that is out there right now about early childhood stress, there was two things that are of note. One is that a substantial component of metabolic disease risk is actually prenatal. And that's particularly important for Indigenous people because Indigenous women experience violence and trauma more often than any other group. And that's a critical part of intrauterine development that actually relates to increased diabetes risk afterwards. Indigenous people have higher rates of adverse childhood experiences, etc. And then kind of the third area that we looked at through this developmental lifespan was adulthood stress. And we saw that in many domains of life, Indigenous people experience discrimination, racism, and bias that also relate to increased kind of HPA, what we call access dysfunction, which is related to inflammation, which is also related to increased heart disease risk.
So, Dr. Lewis, what can be done in Indigenous communities to counteract some of these adverse medical conditions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So, again, according to some of the data that we looked at and some of the projects that our research team is doing as well, two things are really important. I think Indigenous communities already have the answers within them, and the answers are cultural life ways. So the data shows that folks that participate in their traditional cultural activities, other studies have found that people who participate in their Indigenous language, so speakers of their language, are less likely to experience cardiometabolic disease risk. So it's really using our culture, our life ways, the way we know how to, plus having the resources and access to use them the way we know how to.
Well, Dr. Melissa Lewis, it's important new work. Appreciate you taking some time to speak about it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Lots of good info there from Dr. Lewis. Well, that is all the time we have for you tonight to kick off your news for the week. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week, and Dennis Ward will be here tomorrow. I'll see you back here on Wednesday.